Good afternoon, everybody. So, happy Wednesday. So, this video is really for someone who is going through changes, whether it's in your relationship, your career, any type of major life transitions that you're experiencing some of these self doubt and worry. This is a video for you. And I'm the author of the book Perfectly Normal and an immigrant story of making it in America. So I wrote this book because it was really talking about my own journey as someone who's having to deal with this physical disability as a result of a car accident. So going through my journey, I had a lot of negative self-talk, and there's something about negative self-talk that kind of just put us down and it eliminated all our um self-esteem. So I didn't like the fact that, a lot of time I'm going to the public. I didn't like the fact that I'm in the public or talking to people, because in the back of my mind I always had that voice telling me that, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not normal. They're looking at me, and the way that they're talking to me, I feel that there's something about them judging me. So I'm really really so experienced on negative self talk. Every time I jump onto the call and talking about negative self talk, it just kind of sparked my interest. And I wanted to make it like taking the self doubt to the next level. So it's about the person not believing in any of the success or achievement. So there's a complete identity, almost, it feels like, that this person is just cannot celebrate and cannot accept the achievement at all, versus the negative self-talk, which we all go through on a daily basis at one point or another. So perhaps you're in a challenging situation right now. That self-doubt, that voice would just jump on, and sometimes it may not be a voice, it would be just a simple idea or thoughts or thinking that, I'm not good enough. That is your negative self-talk. So what are some of the example of negative self-talk? So examples of negative self-talk include, "Oh, I'm not good enough. I can't do that project because I'm I'm too busy and I don't have the skills, or I can't get that job because of my age. I'm too old for that job." Or something like, um, "I can't be in a relationship because I'm just not pretty enough." Anywhere between that line, within that line of thinking and mentality and voices, would be considered as negative self-talk. And men and women are very different when it comes to negative self-talk. So when men are in negative self-talk situation, those typically show up in their career. So if they're going to a job interview, they may think that, oh, I don't think I'm gonna get that. I don't have the qualification that they were looking for. Or if you're going through from one career to another, it may sound like, well, this is a great opportunity, but I just think that I'm not gonna get it. And so you start not seeing your own strength and your own ability to manage that situation. So those are typically showing up in the men. For women, it generally show up in a relationship, so, or even the relationship to themselves. So they typically would experience something that's very low self-esteem, in the sense that in a relationship, so my partner is treating me this way because, I'm just not good enough, or I can't voice my opinion because I'm a woman and I just don't have that role in the society. So there's a lot of different way how the negative self-talk can show up for us. So how do you eliminate negative self-talk? And that's one of the questions that I get asked all the time. Like, how do you eliminate your negative self-talk? So there's a couple of tips that I wanted to share with you. And the most important one is creating that awareness for yourself. So when you catch yourself having that negative self-talk, that's a great teaching moment. That's a great way of eliminating your negative self-talk. And we often behave in the way that we have a pattern of showing up in this world. So in order to catch or eliminate your negative self-talk, you have to catch them first. So start by paying attention to when when do these negative self-talk come arises, and in what situation. Is it something that you're trying to set yourself into a new adventure? So for example, I have this friend who's she's a coach, and she's trying to create the online presence by creating more video. And what ended up happening is this negative self-talk kick in, and she's afraid that every time she shoot a video and put it up onto the social media, no one's gonna like it, no one's gonna look at it. So even before she take any action, she was really not taking action by having experiencing that fear. So and she's not moving anywhere, and that's a very common effect of how the negative self-talk, the self-doubt, will actually put us in a place where we stop taking action. And so when you're in that scenario, when you're in the situation where you're trying something new, something a new adventure perhaps, and you wanted to experience something different, chances are that self-doubt will come in and saying a lot of different things to you. So in that moment of time, the way that you catch it is ask yourself, what are you telling yourself in that moment? And when you are clear on what is it that you're saying to yourself, and if it's a negative self-talk, then by catching it, you actually eliminate the power it has over you by 50%. So once you catch it, you want it to start thinking about what is true and what is not, right? So if you're saying to yourself, "Oh, I'm not good enough for that job," well, let's look at your qualification. Let's look at your strength, and let's look at your weakness. How good are you in fulfilling the job duty? Maybe you're actually exceeding what their expectation is. So you might be even doing more than what's needed. You're overqualified versus what are some of the areas that you can learn and grow. So looking at your recognizing your strength and also your weaknesses, you can actually differentiate what is true and what is not true. So really get into your reality. So catch your inner critic or catch your negative self-talk is number one. It's the first step in successfully eliminating this. Number two step is to actually get real into your reality. What is your real? What is your reality? Is it true that you don't have the skills? And lastly, this is one of the tips that I've shared many, many times to my clients. And the tip is you can name your inner critics. And I think a couple of books that actually talk about naming your inner critics. And it really works. Personally, it works for me. So as you can see, there's a little Barbie doll here. That's actually my inner critic. So my inner critic is this Barbie doll because I'm physically challenged. And so growing up, I never had that physical appearance of, looking like normal, which is why I call my book Perfectly Normal. And so growing up, I always had that experience of, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough, and I can't, reach on the high shelf because I'm short. And when people they're judging me, that was my inner critic. That was my negative self-talk that I was giving myself. So by naming my inner critic, so my Barbie doll is actually she actually has a name. Her name is Daisy. By naming my Barbie doll, I actually separate my own identity with this negative self-talk. And what it does for me is every time that my self-doubt shows up, I will stop and look at whether or not this is true and who is talking here, who is speaking here. Is it Daisy or is it me, Michelle? So it allows me to have two separate way of how I can choose to look at the same circumstance and situation. So if you're going to a new job, who's talking to you? Is it you yourself saying your reality, or is it this other thing that you're just feeding yourself the idea of that you are not good enough? So separating out and naming your inner critic, it's a really great effective way of doing it. The other way that people have done is actually drawing out your inner critic, which I've done both. But I found, having a Barbie doll, a physical entity that I can see, I can touch, I can throw. It creates a better sense of reality for me. But if you're someone who likes to draw, and you can actually definitely draw out your inner critic, or your that judging voice that you heard over and over. So drawing out your inner critic, give it a name, give it a wacky name, or make it look like a monster or something that you can relate to it. So the next time when you're in a situation where you're not familiar with the things, or you're not familiar with the adventure that you're about to embark, or anything that's new that you're trying to achieve, then you have a way of separating yourself from the voice that's in your head that's keeping you down, keeping you small, lowering your self esteem. And what you end up happening is there's a tremendous sense of freedom that comes out from the moment that you get to decide and choose how you want to move forward with your action. So I hope this makes sense for you in terms of how you can start eliminating your negative self-talk. So again, some of the example of negative self-talk include, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I don't have what it takes to do well. Those are just a couple of examples. And if you have any additional or something that you hear all the time for yourself, go ahead and put that in the comments for me. I would love to hear, what are other examples of negative self-talk that's out there. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to hit the subscribe button and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of the tips that I'm going to share with you throughout the year on negative self-talk. And again, to summarize, how do you eliminate your self-talk? Number one, identify and catch your negative self-talk. Be able to identify, when does it show up and what scenario, what situation. It'll help you to create a more awareness. Number two is to get real with your reality. So differentiate what is real versus what is not true. Who are you in that moment of time when these voices come up, and what are you saying to yourself? And the third one, the most effective one, is thanks to my Barbie doll Daisy, is naming your critics. So giving your inner critics a name can actually lessen the power even more. So if you haven't already done so, maybe think about, what name do I want to give to my inner critic? And another tip, here's a bonus tip. When you name your inner critic, make sure you don't name it after someone you hate. Your As we go through this, you'll learn why, not to name it. Someone that you hate, because a lot of time, there's a reason for us to experience these negative self-talk. It's not entirely good and bad and black and white. So I'll go more in detail, so stay tuned. Definitely want to hit the subscribe button right now so that you don't miss my future episode about why having negative self-talk is not such a bad thing. So make sure you don't name your inner critic to someone that you hate. Give it a very neutral name. I have one of the client, actually, she named her inner critic after herself, after her name, and it came up as we're talking about, naming your inner critics, and she gave it a symbolized name, and it really fits well in what she's describing that inner critic looks like. So hopefully this is something that you find value with. And again, hit the subscribe button, and you can follow me on Facebook at Life Coaching by Elevate, or you can follow me on Instagram at Elevate Life Coach. And either one, you can send me a DM or leave some comments on the bottom, and I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching.